Gospel lesson today comes from John chapter 2. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "Jesus, they have no wine." But Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone jars, water jars, for the Jewish rite of purification for each meal, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. Jesus said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine, he did not know where it came from, although the servants had drawn the water. They knew. The steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become a little tipsy. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. This is the word of life.
Thanks be to God.
So if you've read the Gospel of John, you know it's quite different from what they call the synoptics, the first 3 Gospels. Jesus is a bit more formal. He's more like this icon here, you see? Very stately, very composed, very centered in spiritual, heavenly realities. And those who make these beautiful icons, they do have a profound meaning in spirituality, but most of us are not really familiar with that. You know, there are larger cosmic heavenly meanings that are shining through this picture. So that's why it isn't very lifelike, you know. It's all pointing to the divine reality that shines through Jesus. And in John's Gospel, as you know from the very start, it's portraying Jesus as a very embodiment of heavenly wisdom and authority. So this is why Jesus is so calm and controlled and unhurried throughout this Gospel. So this is the cosmic Christ. Remember, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word is the logos, the logic, the meaning that encapsulates all of the purpose and meaning of life. So Jesus is not in a rush because, you know, he knows what God's plan is. He knows how it's going to unfold. This is the perspective that we get in John's Gospel, and you get different perspectives in the other Gospels that fill out our perception of Jesus. Now, just as an example, you remember the story of Lazarus in John's Gospel. Lazarus is a very good friend of Jesus, but he falls ill. His sisters come and tell Jesus about it. They say he's critically ill. He's about to die. So what does Jesus do? He jumps right up and goes to help him, right? No. He waits 4 days. They've already buried Lazarus when Jesus arrives and raises him up from the dead. So nothing is going to rush Jesus. Jesus pretty much knows what the divine timing is, and he takes his time. So, you know, he's not going to jump up and do something for you just because you ask him. Even if he's right there at your wedding, you've run out of wine, and he's going to say, "What does this have to do with my mission? My hour has not yet come." This is the kind of guy that would say to you, "Your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency for me." So Jesus' hour He's talking about the hour of the kingdom of God that starts when it starts arriving and when it starts changing things. This hour also echoes Jesus' ultimate hour on the cross, where his total surrender and life-giving gesture gives life to the whole world. So Isaiah 25 that Jim read is talking about this. The kingdom of God is going to be this amazing life-giving event. It's going to roll out this cosmic feast for the whole world. Rich foods and fine wines are going to be spread out for everyone. It says death will be swallowed up. Grief will be no more. Tears will be wiped away. The shame and disgrace of the people will be taken away from all the earth. So this is the day, this is the hour for which the whole world has been waiting. And Jesus' hour will be that opening scene as these momentous events unfold for the world. So it is momentous. And in fact, when Isaiah talks about the kingdom of God, the image he uses is a mountain. He says, on this mountain, there will be a worldwide feast that will nourish the nations. On this mountain, grief will be cast out, and death itself will be destroyed. So this is a mountainous, momentous vision of God transforming the world. So as I read this passage, maybe this is the problem that Jesus has with starting his kingdom mission in this little town of Cana. It's a small-time wedding, small rural town. Is this really where you're going to start a worldwide revolutionary movement in Cana? All because these people happen to run out of wine, so I'm going to start up the kingdom of God right here? Is Mary pressing Jesus to turn his cosmic mountain into a molehill? So John's gospel, very formal, very serious. Jesus, always large and in charge. He calls the shots. Except this one time, at the very beginning. And it looks like his mom is trying to force the issue about when to start this mission. So, to try to bring this to life, I've carefully crafted a dramatic scene, rendering this in a more contemporary setting, perhaps. So I've asked Danielle to act this out. It's a brief scene, so pay attention.
Playing the part of Mary, Mother of God, will be Pauline, mother of Brian and Danielle. My mother was also a doer, and if you ran out of something, she would want you children to go get it fixed. Jesus, these people have run out of wine. Woman, what has this to do with me? My hour has not yet come. Well, maybe it has, and maybe it hasn't. In the meantime, let's make ourselves useful. You servants standing over there, Jesus has something for you to do. Oh, Mom.
And scene. I title this, Icon Interrupted. So you can detect there might be a little bit of tension between these two. Jesus addresses his mother as woman and says, what does this catering problem have to do with you and me? Now Mary doesn't answer Jesus directly. She just turns to the servants and says, do what Jesus tells you to do. In other words, she's basically saying, he's going to do what I just asked him to do, so get ready. This is a lot of chutzpah on the part of a woman. So it looks like Jesus' big hour is going to happen a little earlier than scheduled. No time for press release, no time to get something out to the shopper so that people know what's happening. It doesn't look like this is going to be a well-attended event. And when you look at the whole story, maybe Jesus' miracle does come a bit too soon. Because are people really ready for this? Are they noticing it? Hardly anybody notices that there's this potentially life-giving, world-transforming event that's happening right there at the wedding. It's your typical big, fat Jewish wedding. bunch of people are milling around, there's a lot of noise and laughter, there's music and food, and all these people are carrying on oblivious to the fact that Jesus and these servants are off in the corner making miraculous wine. They're not noticing this. And this wine is so important because it's signaling the beginning of the world-changing kingdom of God that's happening right under their noses. Only Jesus and this handful of servants know what's going on. So the servants obey Jesus and they fill up these 6 stone jars with water. He blesses it, and suddenly it's wine. It comes from Jesus. He is the source. This is an important part of the story. Only the ones who obeyed and participated recognize that the wine is miraculous. So what do? If they take the wine to the head waiter, he doesn't get it. He doesn't know that Jesus is the source of the wine. So he takes it to the bridegroom and asks him about it. The bridegroom doesn't know anything about this either. So all the head waiter can say is that, wow, that's very gracious of you to save some of the really good stuff for later in the party. So the guests, they're clueless too, They are filling their cups with miraculous wine, symbolizing forgiveness and abundant life, the kingdom of God, victory over death. They're just drinking away, they're swilling it down like it's $3 chuck. Nobody knows what's going on. So, it makes you wonder, what we might be missing. Could Jesus be showing up at our weddings and birthday parties, our potlucks, rummage sales, and might we be missing something? You're out in the town, the wine is flowing, people are singing, gifts are exchanged, friends are hugging, it's all so beautiful. But do we really appreciate it? Do we really appreciate the source from which all these blessings flow? Has a moment arrived where we've missed something essential? Something we need to respond to. Of course, as you go out on your daily rounds, if you're expecting somebody like this, if that's going to be your cue to respond to God's presence in our midst, you're probably going to miss out. This really doesn't look like the kind of guy that's going to show up and give you 180 gallons of free wine, really good wine. 180 gallons, that's how much of water that they poured into those type of jars. It's an outrageous amount of wine. It's supposed to represent, abundance and joy, forgiveness and new life, the beginning of the kingdom of God. These are all the good things that make life worthwhile, that flow from Christ's presence in our midst. But are we aware? We believe that Christ can't be part of the celebrations and social events or times of enjoyment. We're going to miss the miracle that we need most, the one that really sustains us. Jesus is showing us that our practical needs, our socializing, our celebrating are not small and trivial to God. Our joys and concerns are all opportunities where God can make an appearance. So it's never too late to connect our hour with God's hour. And oftentimes, Christ's hour starts when, for us, the wine runs out. Things go wrong. We don't have enough strength. We don't have enough friends. We don't have enough money. So we need Jesus to find our joy again, to connect with the source of life. So that's what Jesus is telling us in this gospel. He is the joy of life. He doesn't stand back and scowl at our festivities. He doesn't disdain our ordinary pleasures. Jesus is the fullness of life. So, this story about turning water into wine It opens our eyes to the fact that Christ is present in our midst. He's the source of all of these things that are good and sustaining and joyful. So he changes our ordinary attitudes in where we take things for granted, our watered down experiences, and has us look for something more intense, more life-giving. He wants us to change from being religious observers or mindless observers to becoming active disciples, people who are aware of how God is the one giving the good things of life through the ordinary things that we experience. One of the great theologians of the 3rd century said, "God is glorified in the human being who is fully alive." So that's what Jesus wants for us, to be fully alive, to be active participants in the liberating activity of God's kingdom. Jesus says, "I have come that you might have life, abundant life." So, not watered down life, not life where we take things for granted, not life where we just mindlessly coast along, but life that is mindful of Jesus as the source, the sustainer, the celebrator of all that is good in our life, the things that make us vibrant, the things that help us make a difference. So if you read the story carefully, you see that the miracle, if you want to see it, you have to participate. You're going to have to be miracle. You've got to be like Mary and see that there's some real human need out there and not downplay the importance. You've got to say, you're not going to endlessly postpone dealing with it because the perfect time, the perfect hour has not come. The hour is now. And you've got to be like those servants, willing to do something, willing to obey Jesus. Sometimes that means a lot of trips back and forth to the well, where it seems like, what are we doing this for? What's being achieved? What's being accomplished? But the point is, in that kind of faithfulness, we stay close to what Jesus is doing, and we begin to open our eyes to the possibilities of what Jesus can turn our ordinary activities into. So that's the true center of the story and of our personal stories. What is Jesus doing in our lives? How is Jesus present? How is Jesus being revealed and glorified? How are we connecting to Jesus as the source and the center of all of our everyday comings and goings? John is telling us that if you want to see a miracle, connect with the source of miracles that sustains you every day. Then you will glorify God by being fully alive. You've got to open your eyes and notice. The hour is now. The time is now. Jesus is the miracle in all the blessings